Today, I would simply like to talk to you about probability. I don't have any complex experiments or anything of that nature to showcase to you today. I want to talk to you about this seemingly innocuous concept, which to me is the most misunderstood concept overall when it comes to AI. The bottom line, I see a lot of people when it comes to AI, framing this discussion in a way where they say that AI models in their current form won't work because they're probabilistic, because the math is probabilistic. I turn that on its head, and I understand probability. Uh, I've been studying it my entire life from a level where the models work exactly because they are probabilistic. Your brain works probabilistically whether you want it to or not. The universe works probabilistically whether you want it to or not. The human brain has a tendency to want the universe, the world, everything around us to operate linearly. We want it to operate like the perfect linear mathematical equation. Nothing in the universe operates that way. Not even linear mathematical equations, which I'll show you once we get a little bit further into this, right? So let me start off with a story, a simple, broad story. This is a story about a world in which probability doesn't exist. And I want you to think through this story and oftentimes think who, like, oftentimes we would often think that this is the robot stance, is like what this story is going to outline to me. And so let me illustrate it. The city of Ethelgard hummed not with the chaotic buzz of chance, but with the smooth, predictable whir of certainty. In Ethelgard, probability was a myth, a relic of a barbaric past before the Great Calculation. The Great Calculation, a planet-sized supercomputer powered by captured starlight, predicted everything. It knew the exact trajectory of every falling leaf, the precise lifespan of every mayfly, the minute-by-minute emotional state of every citizen. Alara, a chronomaestro, a profession dedicated to verifying the calculations, though it was mostly ceremonial, stood on her balcony overlooking the perfectly symmetrical city gardens. Every rose bloomed in the exact predicted shade of crimson. Every fountain pulsed with the mathematically perfect flow determined by the calculation. There was a beautiful, sterile order to it all. Alara, however, felt a prickling and alien sensation. The great class calculation classified as mild disquiet, cause unexplained existential input. Her assigned partner, Theron, a stoic man whose facial expressions remained as constant as the city's weather patterns, arrived precisely on schedule. His footsteps a metronome of predictability. Chronomaestro Alara, he said, his voice a monotone drone. Verification cycle 37B commencing. Everything is, as always, within parameters. Alara nodded. Of course it is, Theron. Her voice held a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. It was a tremor, the calculation, focused on larger, more quantifiable matters missed. Their task was to observe the hatching of a rare Lumina butterfly. The calculation predicted its wings would unfold at precisely 14:32:17, displaying a pattern of iridescent blue and gold scales, mapped down to the last pigment cell. They watched the chrysalis suspended from a meticulously pruned branch. 14:32:16, 14:32:17, nothing. Alara felt the mild disquiet surge, intensifying into something the calculation would likely label moderate anomaly, potential systemic error. Theron, however, remained unchanged. 14:32:18, still nothing. 14:32:19, a tiny crack appeared on the chrysalis, but it was not the predicted location, not the calculated angle. When the Lumina butterfly finally emerged, it was not blue and gold. It was a vibrant, riotous swirl of emerald, crimson, and violet, a pattern utterly unforeseen, a chaotic burst of color in the monochromatic world of Ethelgard. Theron blinked. A flicker of something that might have been confusion crossing his face. He quickly suppressed it. Anomaly, he stated, his voice still even, but now tinged with a hint of uncertainty, reporting to deviation control. But Alara, for the first time in her life, felt a stirring of something akin to joy. The beauty of the unexpected, the thrill of the unknown flooded her senses. The great calculation, for all its power, could not comprehend this. It could not quantify the breathtaking, awe-inspiring beauty of unpredictability. She gently cupped the butterfly in her hands. It fluttered its wings, a tiny rebellion against the tyranny of certainty. Deviation control will sterilize it, Theron said, his voice flat. Correct the error. Alara looked at the butterfly, then at Theron. For the first time, she saw him, not as a cog in the machine, but as a being capable of something more. No, Alara said, the word surprising even herself. It was the first truly independent action she had ever taken. It's not an error, it's something new. She opened her hands and the Lumina butterfly soared into the sky, a single splash of a vibrant, unpredictable color against the perfectly calculated gray of Avogard. It was a tiny act of defiance, a whisper of chaos in a world of order. But it was enough. It was a seed, and Alara knew, with a certainty that defied the great calculation itself, that this seed, this tiny bit of probability, would eventually bloom. It had to. The very nature of the universe, she now realized, demanded it. Even in a world without probability, the potential for the unexpected, for change, for something more, could never be truly extinguished. It merely waited for the right moment, the right chrysalis to break free. And oftentimes we put the computers in the lens of this world, all right, where computers are always thought to be the most precise calculations and predictors within this, right? The story has a computer at the center of it. And we often think that this is the opposite of human thought and frame it as the opposite of human thought, except for when it comes to actually calculating and reasoning and thinking, right? We think that all of these things are a very linear process. And if we have probability within these processes, then it's bad. But I would state that not a single one of your thought processes is linear. Your memory isn't linear, the way that you think, the way that you generate thoughts, etc. All of these are probabilistic patterns that occur within the brain. The problem occurs with the human brain in that our brains are very bad at assessing probability. We've never been in a situation historically through evolution where we've had to actually assess and contemplate probability on a realistic level. Right? We've evolutionarily been trained to measure probability wrong because it's more advantageous at certain points of evolution to measure probability wrong than it is to measure it right. Given, let's see a scenario, you're in the wild and you're faced with a bear and you have to probabilistically decide, is this bear going to eat me and attack me, or should I be fearful of the bear? Probabilistically, if you just you weigh it out and you think it through an even situation, in most of those situations you probably shouldn't be fearful of the bear. If you underestimate that, you're going to get eaten. And then so anyone that has ever underestimated the probability of having a bad time when they ran into a bear and taking that too far has probably met their demise or been crippled in some chance where they probably could not produce offspring afterwards. So I would imagine that essentially eliminates a certain portion of the population automatically from those situations, and then evolutionarily guides us towards thought patterns in which we overestimate probability to the extreme in those areas. And we do this a lot, right? Our brain is very specifically designed to overestimate probability in certain areas and underestimate it in other areas. We flat out suck at the equation, period. Let me give you few common examples, right? So let's just run through a few very common probability scenarios, and then I'll try, we'll go through kind of two of them, and then we'll do a different experiment. First one we'll do is like birthdays, right? So then essentially we're going to take this is a common experiment. We'll take a room of people, a room of say 100 people max, and then in this instance we're going to do 10,000 simulations of these people. We're going to assign them a random birthday between 0 and 364, so 365 birthdays. And then of these people, we're going to see like how many people we need in the room until we get to essentially overlap, right? Like people having the same birthdays. And then what we can see here is the probability distribution very likely works out very counterintuitively to how your brain naturally calculates this equation, right? What we can see is at 20 people out of 365 birthdays, you have a near 50% chance. At 40 people, it's a near 100% chance. At 50 people, it's that's like 98%. And that you're going to have someone in that room, that two people in that room that are going to have repeating birthdays. And it's like, I mean, just this is the pure statistics of it, and there's no other way to break it down, right? Your brain is going to try to like break this equation down into different, more complex equations. It doesn't get more complicated than this, right? And that's just kind of the flat out bottom line, right? Again, our brain has been trained wrong when it comes to this specific area. Let me give you another example. This is the Monty Hall problem, right? And then so this is very famous problem. And then so we're just going to essentially, this is 10,000 simulations, and then we're going to simulate the Monty Hall problem. And then so in this simulation, it's very straightforward, right? We have three doors. Contestant makes an initial choice, whatever door that they pick. The host is going to open the door, and that door is going to contain a goat behind the door. And then so now the contestant is faced with a choice. Do they stick with their original choice, or do they switch their choice? Your brain would tell you it's 50-50 probability, right? That we know that there's not a goat behind the first door that was revealed, and then so it's either 50-50 chance that it's either a goat with our original decision or not. But that's not how the actual probability breaks down. So according to actual probability, I just ran this for 10,000 simulations, 66% chance that we should switch. We should, in that instance, we have 2-to-1 chance of winning if we switch our guess, as opposed to just sticking with what our brain tells us is 50-50 probability. And I'm just like, my brain screams it, right? It should be 50-50 probability. I assume it goes into your brain as well. 10,000 simulations, you can do the math. I mean, this question came about initially because someone questioned the smartest woman in the world, and she literally came up with this, and then a bunch of people called her stupid, and then a lot of people had to eat crow because they figured out that this is actually the way that it breaks down, right? And then so this simulates and shows you like how bad our brains actually are when it comes to these things, right? But so let's discount that, and then let's just go with our brains. So our brains want everything to be linear, discrete, perfect, right? If it's a linear mathematical equation, if we can break it down linearly to a very linear and straightforward mathematical equation, then that will make sense to our brains, right? Our brains will like that very much, and that would explain exactly how the world would operate, right? Let me give you a very simple linear equation. R times X times 1 minus x. Very simple. This is a linear equation, right? R times x times 1 minus x. And then this is what happens with this particular linear equation. If r equals 3 or less, it's a line. It's linear, right? Exactly as you would expect it to be. But if r is 3 or greater, it's pure chaos. Like literally literal chaos, right? And if r is between 3 and 3.6, it's like you have literally 3 different states of existence that this equation operates in. R times x times 1 minus x. It's a linear equation with quantum mechanics built into it. If the universe is discrete, if the universe operates exactly as you want it to, according to your mathematics, why does this equation work out the way that it does, right? Let me give you just a simple, another very simple example here as to how, 2 simple examples as to how the brain treats probability in these areas very badly, right? And just simple illustrations to showcase this. So lightning, shark, or winning the lottery. You literally have a greater probability and a greater chance of getting struck by lightning, getting eaten by a shark, or getting eaten by a shark than you do by winning the lottery. Again, your brain isn't going to process that well because the brain struggles very hard when it comes to these extreme big probabilities, right? Understanding whether or not you're going to get your probability of getting eaten by a shark or winning the lottery doesn't necessarily help you in the moment if you're being faced with a shark. So your brain is designed to just devote 100% of resources to fight or flight in the moment of the shark, right? It doesn't care about probability. Like, it doesn't matter. Probability is irrelevant. Get out of the way of the shark. It's a very simplistic way of breaking down that equation, right? And that's essentially what the brain does. And then I think also too, there's a cultural conditioning element of this as well. And then so that's like kind of the last point of this that I want to highlight within this, right? So yes, no, and maybe. When I say this, like yes, no, maybe, what do you like? Maybe always means no, right? That's what everyone thinks, and then so we have cultural conditioning towards this as well. Like we as children, like a child understands maybe better than an adult does, and like I noticed this, and I bring this up because of my kids, right? Interactions with my kids, and I've noticed this for myself. To me, maybe always means no. Like I agree with the song, right? Because I'm an adult. Like I've been like, if you tell me maybe, like yeah, it's no, dude. Like, but maybe doesn't always mean no, right? Like that's in actual probabilistic land, that's not actually how it works. But we like, our brains are conditioned culturally across every single aspect that you could possibly think of to want these to be linear equations. But and then even so, from like the 1950s until like the 1990s, we thought that the universe was linear and discrete, right? And now we can prove that it's not. That it's the universe, the fundamental aspects of the universe, quantum mechanics itself, all of these aspects are built on top of probability. The linear math, the like wanting to get the perfect linear equation is a human construct. It doesn't exist. And then so the arguments that like these models are going to fail because they're not based off of straight linear math is that's bonkers to me. Like it's counterintuitive to how nature actually operates. Nature is they're yes, they're built on probabilistic math, just like your memory is, just like your brain is. Like your brain works because of probabilistic math. If there weren't probability within these models, they would suck. That's what I mean. It's called XAI, general AI, good old fashioned AI. There's numerous words for what you want, right? And it's still a field to this day. I have videos on it, and I go into it and I dive in. It's cool to work with and it's fun to work with, right? It's like working with different puzzle pieces. But I acknowledge working with them. Like you can, like there's a missing element within it. It's like you can very clearly see when probability isn't in that equation and why it's needed within an equation, right? Like it is necessary to this equation. Even if you have 1% probability within that model, you need it in there, just like you need it within your brain, right? To me, this is a wonderful equation. It's a good equation. Your brain wouldn't work right if you were like a robot. If you were like the story and like that story that I read at the top, it's a miserable story, right? Like that world would suck. But that's the world of linearity. Like that's the world of non-probability, right? And then so be careful what you wish for within linear versus probability equations and actually understanding how it works. Like no one in this universe, on this world, I think, doesn't actually would actually advocate for a linear society if they actually understand the exact ramifications of it, right? Like linear, like a perfectly linear society, a perfectly linear equation, all of these things sound perfect. They relax the human brain in the ways that the human brain was built wrong to deal with evolutionary concepts. But just because it relaxes your brain doesn't mean it's the best solution. We can hopefully move past evolution, which is what we're trying to do. And so hopefully this is a good explanation overall of probability, simplistic overall introduction to probability. But if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.